I think a lot of people, they like the idea of just having somebody. But the problem with that is when you don't communicate properly, and I'm speaking to the fellas, guys, you could be stopping that young lady from finding her husband, somebody who will be intentional about her. So again, that's the first question that you want to ask. And I believe that people deserve to be communicated with properly to know, what are your intentions with me? Are we just, a lot of times people ask the question, what are we doing? Right? A lot of people will ask that question. What are we doing? Right? Are we just companions, or do you actually want covenant? That's a whole nother conversation. Are you intentional about marriage? Ask these 5 questions to see. Hey, what's up, guys? I'm your host, and welcome back to Preparing Men for Marriage. Listen, we got another video for you that we're about to dive into, and I'm gonna tell you where this comes from. All right. But before I do, I want to ask that you make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you're following us, put your bell notifications on, all of that, to make sure that you don't miss anything that we drop. All right. All right. Without further ado, let's dive into these 5 questions. So the first question that you want to ask to determine if you are intentional about marriage is this: what does it even mean to be intentional about marriage? Okay. And so just looking at that question, you have to do some self-inventory, right? Maybe you have someone that you're dealing with. Maybe you don't. When we say, are you intentional about marriage, and you ask, what does that mean? Like, how do I know? What does that even mean? You have to do the self-inventory. Am I dating? Am I dating with a purpose and an intent to be married, or am I just looking to have a good time? Okay. Another thing that when you're doing self-inventory that you can look at is you can say, okay, how is my life set up? Is my life set up to where I'm prepared to have someone in my life seriously? See, these things here, when you begin to look at them, again, they're all surrounding your intentions and how your life is set up and what you really want to do. I think we're out here sharing our lives with people, and I'm not sure we really know what we want. So as a result, it's going to be very hard for you to communicate that with the person that you're dealing with. Okay. And I believe that people deserve to be communicated with properly to know, what are your intentions with me? Are we just, a lot of times people ask the question, what are we doing? Right? A lot of people will ask that question. What are we doing? Right? Are we just companions, or do you actually want covenant? That's a whole nother conversation right there. I think a lot of people, they like the idea of just having somebody. But the problem with that is when you don't communicate properly, and I'm speaking to the fellas, guys, you could be stopping that young lady from finding her husband, somebody who will be intentional about her. So again, that's the first question that you want to ask. What does it even mean to be intentional? And again, as we discussed, being intentional essentially means that you have a plan for the person that you're with. You know that you want to be married. It's just a matter of if this is your person. The next question is, how do I know if I'm being intentional? Again, that's a continuation of that question, right? But let's just be honest. We know what we want and what we don't want. So for example, if in your mind you don't want to be with someone long term, you know you're not being intentional with that person's life. And you should be honest and communicate that. Okay. This is the other part of this. If you have made it up in your mind that you're serious about this person, right? I'm not saying you need to put a ring on it in 2 months, 3 months. I'm not putting a timetable to this thing. But what I am saying is that you need to be able to communicate what your intentions are. And that's one of those ways that you know you're being intentional, because your communication is where it needs to be. I did a video, and you can probably find it somewhere up here. I did a video where I talk about why communication is one of the number one marriage skills, right? But you don't just get married and all of a sudden your communication is great. No, that's something that you, again, are intentional on doing from the inception of the relationship. Okay. So again, how do I know if I'm being intentional? I think one thing is that you communicate it well. Okay. But let's say this as well. Another way you know that you're being intentional, watch this, fellas, is that your word is the same thing as your actions. So you don't just speak it, you act it out. Maybe that does lead to you proposing, right? Maybe that does lead to, again, you being very communicative about what your next step is going to be. You have a goal that's set in mind that you want to achieve before you move forward in proposing, right? But you know that you're being intentional when you're communicating, but when your words also match your actions. We're grown out here, so we don't need to play games with people. What you say is essentially what you'll do. This is a question in and of itself. And again, this goes back to the first two things we've talked about. So to the guy who's out here who says, I love my girl, but I don't know if I want to be married. That's one part. But then he also says, I don't know if I want to be married to her. Now you've got one A and one B to this situation. And at the end of the day, you love her, but you don't know if you want to be married to her. This is what I always say. This is the intentional part about being married. You need to be intentional about finding out if this is your God-given spouse. You know, I believe we waste people's time all the time, right? And for me, I'm not in the game anymore. But if I'm in the game, one of the things that I would do, and one of the things I tell guys is, before you start investing a lot of time, before you start being around this person and quote unquote building something, right? Because 6 months can easily turn into a year can easily turn into 3 years, 3 years can easily turn into what are we doing? You should know if that's your God-given spouse. You should be very intentional about asking God, what is this person's role in my life? Okay. And so first things first, it's, do I want to be married? And so this is the challenge here, because if you say you don't want to be married, but you have a woman in your life and it's now years that you've been with her, brother, you're acting married without moving forward with things. So maybe there's a reason why you don't want to take that next step. Maybe it's fear. Okay, maybe it's again, you're just not sure if it's her. Maybe it's that you've allowed society to tell you that there's no benefit to marriage. That's a big thing now. Okay, let me say this much. I will say this much. There is no benefit to marrying the wrong person. Let me say that one more time. There is no benefit to marrying the wrong person. Marrying the wrong person is like throwing your life away. So you want to know if that's your God-given spouse. And so that means that's a conversation between you and God. Okay. But then the next part of that is, okay, you feel like this is somebody that you can spend the rest of your life with. Maybe you're unsure if this is your God-given spouse, but you're asking and you're trying to figure that out. You're just not sure yet. Well, guess what? Now you need to really dive into this situation with this young lady. And again, be intentional. God, I don't quite understand what this is. I want to be married. There is no doubt in my life that I want to be. But I just want to make sure that this is the right situation. And again, a lot of times we take so much time, so many years get wasted because we're unsure of so many different things. But I think that's part of the problem. We get into things and we dive head first based off of emotion, companionship, and all of those things. But we miss this thing here. Do I want companionship or do I want covenant? I believe that covenant is something that God establishes between man and God, but also on the earth between a husband and a wife. And it's not what we think it is. I think we are very casual with covenant, and covenant is something that is sacred. And so if you're getting ready to enter into something sacred, then there's certain boundaries that you put up where you're not going to play with somebody's life. You're going to take their life and their emotions and how you go about dealing with them seriously. Okay, so that's question number 3. Question number 4, and this is a big question. What do I need to do to prepare? What do I need to do to prepare? At this point, maybe you're intentional, but you don't know how to prepare. Okay, well, again, like I say, I think what needs to happen at this point is there needs to be a plan, right? I know this is my person. I know I want to be married. I don't know a thing about marriage. Okay, I don't know a thing about marriage. I've not seen a healthy marriage. So I think one of the important things when considering how do I prepare, I think it's first learning about marriage in and of itself. For me, I believe that God created marriage, and I believe we see that in Genesis 2. Genesis 2, right around verse 24, 25. Okay. And because of that, because I believe that God created marriage, I believe that you need to go to the Bible so that you can understand the intention that God had behind marriage. And again, I go back to the word covenant. So I see people that are saying, I want to see, I've never seen a healthy marriage, right? I'm not saying I haven't seen a healthy marriage before. I'm saying a lot of us can say that we have not seen a healthy marriage. So now I need to go to see, what does a healthy marriage look like? What do I need to do? What is my role and what God requires me to be as a husband? Okay. So I think that is an important question that needs to be asked. What do I need to do to prepare? And I think the first thing is learning what marriage is about. What did God intend for marriage to be about? And what is my role as the leader of the family, as a man? And my last question is, where do I go to prepare? Okay. Now, this question is very near and dear to my heart, right? Because I wrote a book called Preparing Men for Marriage. All right. And in this book, I cover 13 things to consider when preparing for marriage. Additionally, I created an 8-week program that goes alongside the book, all right, that men can follow. There are other resources out there, but I think when you say, where should I go? There are resources out here. There are things that we can do. All right. There are programs that are in our churches. And I will say this. I will say I will say something very controversial. I believe in the church we need to do better with preparing men for marriage, preparing families for marriage. I believe we need to. I think we push people to the altar and we don't properly prepare people for marriage. And the result of not properly preparing people for marriage is that they're right back in your office, either needing to do counseling or looking for a divorce. I believe that we need to do better at preparing, especially because I do believe that the Bible is the place to go for us to learn about marriage. Why? Because I believe God created marriage. And if you want to know about the creation of a thing, you go back to the creator. That being said, guys, those are the 5 questions that I would ask if you want to know if you are intentional about marriage. Well, listen, that's my time here. I want to ask again, you've made it this far, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you are turning on the bell notifications. Follow us on all social media. Head on over to TikTok. We are also very active on that platform. And we look forward to seeing you at the next video. Take care. God bless.